You are breathing a lie, and what I am about to reveal to you is the secret that Thoth and the mystery schools have kept to prevent you from being merely a slave to your own emotions. Your body struggles to survive, and your soul is a repository of manipulable memories. But there is a third hidden element called PNEUMA, which is your direct and incorruptible connection to the original source. This divine spark was deliberately hidden from humanity so that you would never discover that air is not just oxygen, but the vehicle of a frequency of total liberation. If you feel something is missing, it is because you have not yet activated the breath that transcends biology. I will show you how to regain control of your existence through the forbidden word that history tried to erase to keep your consciousness imprisoned. If you feel you have been called to this moment, comment, "My spark is awakened." The human journey begins and ends with a single involuntary movement that rarely receives the attention it deserves. At the moment of birth, the first breath breaks the silence and inaugurates physical existence on this dense plane. Decades later, it is the absence of that same flow that marks the definitive end of an earthly biography. Between these two extreme points, the lungs work tirelessly in a rhythm that sustains every thought and heartbeat. Most people go through life without realizing the depth of this constant exchange with the external environment. This mechanical act is the invisible foundation upon which we build our perception of reality and biological survival. Ancient thinkers like Anaximenes of Miletus looked at the sky and their own lungs with genuine wonder. For him, air was not merely empty space, but the primordial substance that gave rise to all existing things. Through the processes of rarefaction and condensation, this invisible element became fire, wind, clouds, and solid ground. Pre-Socratic philosophy saw in breathing the vital breath that held the cosmos together in a coherent structure. They understood that what enters our bodies is the same component that sustains the stars and distant oceans. This vision transformed the simple act of breathing into a direct connection with the intelligence that governs the universe. Looking closely, the physiology of respiration reveals a complex and silent engineering that operates within the ribcage. The pulmonary alveoli function as tiny portals where the outside world meets the bloodstream in a precise chemical dance. Oxygen is absorbed to fuel the cells, while carbon dioxide is discarded as a byproduct of vital combustion. Each cycle of inhalation and exhalation renews the energy available for the brain to process information and maintain waking consciousness. Without this constant fuel, the biological machine would collapse in minutes, proving our absolute dependence on the invisible. It is a life support system that functions autonomously, allowing the mind to occupy itself with other distractions. There is a profound sense of wonder when we stop to observe the fragility and the contained strength in each movement of the diaphragm. We are beings who walk immersed in an ocean of gases, filtering life every few seconds without any conscious effort. This automation gives us the illusion of independence, but in reality, we are vibrant extensions of the air that surrounds us all the time. Modern science describes the molecular mechanisms, but often ignores the mystery of the force that initiates the first respiratory impulse. The body knows how to breathe even when we are sleeping or distracted by the daily concerns of the material world. This mechanical regularity hides layers of meaning that ancient civilizations sought to decipher with reverence and awe. The question that naturally arises from this perfect mechanism is whether we are only absorbing chemical elements known from the periodic table. Nitrogen and oxygen make up most of the atmosphere, but human sensitivity suggests something more subtle floating among the atoms. If breathing is the link between the inner and outer world, it may carry information that transcends pure biology. Perhaps the lungs are not just organs of gas exchange, but receptors of a frequency that shapes our subjective experience. What we call air may be the vehicle of an invisible charge capable of influencing the state of our mind and our emotions. It remains to be discovered whether what sustains the soul is the same fuel that keeps the body functioning in its biological routine. The air we breathe does more than just oxygenate the blood. It nourishes a complex internal structure known as the psyche. This psychological layer acts as a vast reservoir where every experience, however small, is meticulously archived. Plato once described this realm as a bridge between the physical world and the world of ideas, but it is often a place of profound confusion. It is here that our personality is forged, built upon the bricks of past events and the mortar of emotional reactions. Most of what we call the self is actually a collection of these inherited records and patterns. We navigate our daily lives through this filter, without questioning whether these reactions are truly our own or merely echoes of the past. Deep within the limbic system, our brain processes emotions and stores them as survival blueprints. This biological hardware is incredibly efficient at creating associations, much like the classical conditioning observed in laboratories. A certain smell or a specific tone of voice can trigger a cascade of memories and physical sensations without our consent. These effective memories are the tools used by external forces to shape our behavior and dictate our choices. The psyche is not a fortress, but rather a porous surface that absorbs the frequencies of the surrounding environment. This vulnerability makes the mind fertile ground for subtle suggestions and manipulations that occur below the threshold of consciousness. Traumas are not merely events that have occurred, but rather energetic imprints that continue to vibrate within our psychological structure. These wounds create distortions in how we perceive the present moment and the people around us. When a person reacts with disproportionate anger or paralyzing fear, they are often responding to a ghost from their own history. The psyche clings to these shadows because it confuses familiarity with safety, even when that familiarity is painful. We become prisoners of a narrative written by circumstances we did not choose and often cannot change. This accumulation of emotional weight creates a dense fog that obscures the true nature of our existence. Society and its structures understand the mechanics of the human mind far better than most individuals. By targeting our insecurities and desires, these systems manage to direct the flow of our attention and vital energy. The constant bombardment of information and stimuli keeps the psyche in a state of perpetual agitation and reactivity. We are conditioned to seek validation and avoid discomfort, moving like puppets on strings held by invisible hands. This external control is only possible because we identify our entire being with this manipulable layer of thoughts and feelings. The more we believe we are our emotions, the easier it becomes for others to dictate our internal climate. Beneath this turbulent ocean of memories and conditioned responses, a profound and constant silence persists. Even when the psyche is wounded by life or distorted by external influences, something fundamental remains unchanged. This realization brings a sense of unease to those who have built their entire identity upon personality. If the mind can be programmed and emotions can be hacked, the question arises as to who truly observes the process. There is a growing suspicion that our true essence lies far beyond the reach of biological archives and social engineering. This possibility points to a hidden core that remains completely untouched by the wounds of time and the scars of memory. And this is exactly where the great trap of the modern world lies. Discovering that you have this armored core is liberating, but trying to access it using the same mind that was programmed to sabotage you is like trying to open a safe with the wrong key. As long as you do not know the exact code to activate this core, you will continue being held hostage by your emotions, living in survival mode. It was precisely to give you the syntax that unlocks this prison that I structured the Monad Code. It is not a digital book of philosophical reflections. It is your administrator access manual to your own divine spark. In it, I teach you how to bypass the noise of your psyche and take on the position of the operator, rewriting the script of your life in an absolute way. The link for you to take command and secure your access is in the first pinned comment below. Do not let the system continue dictating your inner state. In the sands of ancient Egypt, the figure of Thoth emerged as the supreme guardian of wisdom and precise measure. He was not merely a god of writing, but the very architect who transformed primordial chaos into an organized and functional structure. For the initiates of that time, reality was not a material accident, but a construction based on precise rhythms and invisible laws. Thoth represented the divine mind that brought order to the disordered flow of sensory impressions and linear time. His presence on the temple walls served as a constant reminder that thought possesses a sacred and powerful geometry. Through him, humankind understood that a master of logic existed operating behind the scenes of all manifest creation. The cosmogony of Memphis reveals that the universe arose through the thought of the heart and the clear expression of the tongue. This ancient idea suggests that the spoken word is the anchoring point where the immaterial finally touches physical substance. Thoth was the master of this manifestation process, ensuring that each sound was in harmony with the original plan of existence. He taught that language serves not only for trivial communication between men, but for the sustenance of the cosmos itself. When a word is pronounced with the correct intention and rhythm, it resonates through the layers of the psyche and reaches deeper levels. The Egyptians saw in the precision of rhythm the necessary tool to align the human mind with the higher frequencies of the spirit. In the court of Osiris, the divine scribe stood with his pen and parchment to impartially record the weight of each soul's heart. This symbolic act represents the need for clear intelligence to assess the content of memories and emotions accumulated throughout life. While the psyche gets lost in its own labyrinths of trauma and desire, Thoth offers the ruler of objective and cutting truth. He acts as the mediator who separates what is fleeting and illusory from what possesses eternal and immutable value in being. Without this intellectual and rhythmic guidance, the individual remains at the mercy of the emotional tides we discussed earlier in our journey. The erudition of these ancient civilizations shows that they mastered the science of keeping the mind stable in the face of the brutal pressures of the external world. The architecture of the great temples and the proportions of the pyramids were physical reflections of a profound knowledge of the structure of human consciousness. Mastery over sound and vibration allowed priests to access states of perception inaccessible to the average person today. Thoth was the patron of this spiritual technology, which used the word as a master key to open the gates of inner perception. However, much of this technical understanding has been systematically removed from public records throughout the centuries of history. What remains for us are only fragments of myths that modern science often dismisses as mere unfounded superstitions. This loss of knowledge was not a fortuitous accident, but part of a larger effort to limit humanity's capacity for self-governance. By disconnecting humanity from the laws of rhythm and sovereign thought, societies have become much easier to lead and control. The secret of how to anchor inner order amidst chaos has been kept in closed circles and libraries inaccessible to the public. Without the figure of the mental architect to organize experience, the modern individual often feels fragmented and without a real center of gravity. The wisdom of Thoth points to a core that cannot be manipulated by external words or emotional records distorted by culture. There is a hidden architecture in the soul that has been deliberately obscured to keep humanity trapped in its own limited biological and psychological structure. This historical erasure has paved the way for the fundamental distinction between mind and spirit to be ultimately forgotten. The erosion of this ancient architectural knowledge did not happen by mere chance or simply through the passage of centuries. It was a surgical process designed to simplify human experience until the core of being became invisible. When the understanding of the different layers of existence disappeared, the individual lost the map to their own inner sovereignty. History began to be rewritten to focus only on the struggle for physical survival and the management of social emotions. This strategic narrowing of perspective created a vacuum where the true nature of breath was replaced by an empty biological function. The bridge between the human and the divine was being dismantled piece by piece in the shadows of nascent institutions. A decisive blow occurred during the Council of Constantinople in the year 869. At that assembly, the traditional view of the human being as a threefold entity of body, soul, and spirit was officially altered. Ecclesiastical leaders decided that the spirit was only a part of the soul, effectively merging two distinct realities into one. This change was not merely a theological technicality, but a profound psychological amputation for the entire Western world. By removing the PNEUMA from the official map of human constitution, they severed the direct link with the monad. From that moment on, the human being was reduced to a binary creature, trapped between physical impulses and a manipulated psyche. This reductionism served a very specific purpose of social and spiritual control over the masses. Without the concept of an incorruptible spirit, people became entirely dependent on external mediators to reach the sacred. The inner world became restricted to the realm of the psyche, which is easily influenced by fear, guilt, and dogma. The memories and traumas stored in the soul became the only source of identity for a population that has forgotten its original spark. The feeling of emptiness that many feel today is a direct legacy of this ancient decision to hide the third element. We are living in the echoes of a silence that was forced upon our ancestors to keep them obedient and predictable. The 19th century brought a new wave of reductionism that completed the work begun by medieval councils. Materialistic science emerged to declare that anything not measurable by instruments simply did not exist. The soul itself was relegated to a byproduct of brain activity and chemical reactions in the nervous system. This final blow left the modern individual adrift in a universe of dead matter and random biological accidents. The search for meaning was redirected toward consumerism and the accumulation of material experiences that never bring real satisfaction. Every attempt to find the spirit was dismissed as a hallucination or a desperate defense mechanism against the fear of death. This orchestrated forgetting has created a wall of noise that prevents the perception of life's subtle rhythms. However, no matter how many books are burned or how many councils are held, the truth remains anchored in reality. The PNEUMA cannot be erased by decrees because it is the very fabric that sustains the heart's movement. It exists in a dimension that is immune to historical manipulation and the conditioning of the biological mind. To find it, one must look beyond the stories told by culture and the scars recorded in personal history. The discovery begins with the realization that the PNEUMA already operates in the profound silence between each breath. The silence imposed by history has not been able to extinguish the flame that burns at the center of every human being. This divine spark is the PNEUMA, a direct emanation from the original source that remains pure and untouched. While the soul bears the marks of the world, the spirit vibrates at a frequency that time cannot reach. It functions as an antenna tuned to the monad, awaiting the moment to be properly recognized. Perceiving this presence requires consciousness to shift from mental noise to the stillness of the observer. It is in this empty space that true identity begins to reveal itself as something sovereign and eternal. The monad is not a distant concept or an external deity demanding constant worship. It represents the primordial unity of which each individual is a unique and necessary expression. The PNEUMA acts as the golden thread connecting the periphery of existence to the absolute center of creation. Unlike the questioning and doubting mind, the spirit simply knows its origin and its true purpose. This connection does not depend on complex rituals or any kind of approval from human institutions. Awakening this consciousness is like turning on a light in a room that has been dark for many centuries. Modern science is beginning to explore this reality through the study of waves and harmonic resonance. Everything in the universe vibrates in specific patterns, and the human spirit possesses its own fundamental note. When an individual aligns with this original frequency, the distortions of the psyche begin to dissolve naturally. It's not about fighting traumas, but about vibrating at an octave above them all. Resonance with the monad creates a natural protection against external manipulations from the social environment. The body and mind then serve this higher harmony instead of being governed by chaos. Identifying with PNEUMA completely changes how a person perceives their own personal history. Name, profession, and painful memories become seen merely as temporary garments for the soul. Behind these layers lies a core of intelligence that has never been wounded or diminished by circumstances. This clarity brings a sense of ecstasy that doesn't depend on material achievements or social validation. It's the profound realization that you are the author of the play, not just an actor trapped in a script. The sovereignty of being emerges when the spark takes command of navigating daily life. This revelation transforms the act of living into an experience of absolute and unwavering presence. The fear of death loses its power because the spirit recognizes its non-local and timeless nature. The PNEUMA does not need to be built or conquered because it is already the basis of all perception. The challenge now is to learn to stabilize this frequency amidst the demands of dense daily life. There is a specific mechanism that allows anchoring this light in biology through the vital rhythm. This technique of perception transforms the simple act of breathing into a vehicle of pure consciousness. Breathing functions as the physical bridge connecting the dense biological world to the subtle realm of the spirit. It acts as a manual command for the autonomic nervous system, allowing the individual to dictate the internal state of their own machine. When the rhythm of inhalation and exhalation is consciously altered, the vagus nerve sends a direct signal of safety and sovereignty to the brain. This biological response shuts down the constant noise of the limbic system, which normally keeps the person trapped in survival mode. By calming the amygdala's storm, the body stops reacting to external triggers as if they were fatal threats. In this state of physiological peace, the space for PNEUMA to manifest finally begins to open within the flesh. Ancient traditions understood this biological mechanism long before modern science gave it names like parasympathetic activation. Practitioners of hesychasm sought inner stillness through the repetition of a silent rhythm that synchronized with the heartbeat. They knew that by taming the breath, they were in fact taming the wild horses of the psyche and its endless desires. This was not a mere relaxation exercise, but a rigorous discipline of inner alchemy designed to purify the senses. The goal was to reach a state where intention became a constant vibration, independent of spoken words. Through this intentional stillness, the practitioner ceased to be a victim of their emotional fluctuations and became master of their inner temple. Each emotion has a specific respiratory signature that dictates how energy flows through the biological system. Anger produces short, shallow sighs, while fear freezes the chest in a state of perpetual contraction. Practicing the alchemy of breath is consciously choosing the frequency of the spirit instead of the reactive patterns of the soul. By imposing a slow and deep rhythm, the individual forces the psyche to align with the calm authority of the PNEUMA. This process transmutes the heavy lead of anxiety into the gold of presence and absolute clarity. It is the most direct tool for liberation because it requires no intellectual analysis or years of therapy to produce real change. The real work begins when this mastery of rhythm is taken out of meditation and into the chaos of everyday life. Responding to a provocative message or facing a financial crisis becomes an opportunity to test the strength of the inner connection. Instead of letting the pulse race and the mind spiral, the sovereign individual maintains the rhythmic breath of the observer. This anchor prevents the soul from being pulled back into the maelstrom of conditioned reactions and collective fear. The body becomes a resonance chamber for the higher frequencies of the monad, vibrating in harmony with the source. Each breath transforms into a conscious declaration of independence from the control systems that feed on human instability. Living from the spirit means that the inner state is no longer a reflection of external circumstances. The individual ceases to be a thermometer that merely measures the ambient temperature and becomes a thermostat that defines it. The reactions of the soul, once so loud and demanding, now appear as distant echoes that no longer have the power to dictate behavior. This shift in perspective creates a profound sense of empowerment and determination to remain centered, regardless of the storm. The alchemy of breath has fulfilled its purpose by transforming a biological need into a sacred instrument of spiritual governance. The end result is a life where every action and thought emerges from the silence of the PNEUMA and no longer from the reactions of the soul. The individual no longer seeks the divine in isolated temples or retreats of absolute silence. Every daily action becomes a deliberate expression of the inner center that remains unshaken in the face of external noise. Walking down a crowded street, the person recognizes the mechanical nature of the world without being absorbed by it. There is a clear distinction between the character being played and the observer watching from the heights of the monad. This integration transforms biological existence into a transparent vessel for a much older and more stable light. The everyday is finally recognized as the ultimate laboratory for the exercise of spiritual authority. The emotional hooks that once dictated behavior now fail to find a place to anchor themselves. Manipulation through fear or desire loses its power when the person no longer identifies with the reactive psyche. This immunity is not a cold detachment, but a profound presence that sees through the illusions of social conditioning. The constant bombardment of external stimuli is filtered by a lucidity that rejects any frequency misaligned with its core. One becomes a fortress of consciousness, where the walls are made of pure and unaltered perception. In this state, the individual ceases to be a pawn in the games of collective influence or ancestral traumas. The ancient concept of a guiding reason, known as PNEUMA hegemonicon, now takes the form of a living, pulsating authority within the heart. This inner leader directs every thought and impulse with a precision bordering on mathematical rigor. It does not argue with the world, but simply occupies its rightful place as the sovereign ruler of human experience. Every decision emerges from a place of absolute certainty that dispenses with external validation or logical justification. The noise of the ego is silenced by the silent roar of a will that is perfectly synchronized with the source. This is the true meaning of being the master of one's own destiny in a world made of shadows. The process of becoming a singular and whole being culminates when the spark recognizes itself as the flame itself. This metaphysical individuation represents the final return to a home that was never truly abandoned, only forgotten for a time. All fragments of the personality are integrated into a single point of light radiating from the center. The person no longer feels the need to search for meaning because they have become meaning itself manifested. There is a sense of completeness that transcends the biological cycle of birth, growth, and eventual physical decline. The weight of history is lifted, leaving only the lightness of an eternal and immutable presence. The ultimate understanding arrives not as new information, but as a state of being that cannot be taken away. The word that was once considered forbidden reveals itself as the very silence that sustains the entire manifested universe. It is a state of presence so absolute and unwavering that it becomes the only reality worth inhabiting. The individual walks through the world as a living bridge between the ephemeral and the eternal. There is no more struggle, no more searching, no more division between the human aspect and the original divine nature. The journey ends exactly where it began, but with eyes finally open to the total sovereignty of the Spirit. It's a privilege to know that you followed this journey to the end, and now understand the power of your purest essence. To let me know you're part of this group seeking true sovereignty, write the phrase, "I am the breath of the original source" in the comments. And, family, before I say goodbye today, I need to make a very sincere request to you. Bringing content with this level of depth, connecting the history of the Council of Constantinople, pre-Socratic philosophy, and the hidden mechanics of breathing, requires weeks of rigorous research, translation, and late nights of dedication. We refuse to deliver the superficial content that dominates the internet today. But the truth is that in order to keep this channel alive and continue producing documentaries with this level of quality, we depend entirely on the strength of our community. If this video shifted something in your perception and helped you see beyond matter, I beg you, support our work by purchasing our materials. We have condensed the practical application of all these laws into the manual, The Monad Code, created with the highest level of rigor precisely to fund this project and put the power in your hands. Purchasing this ebook is the oxygen that allows our channel to keep existing and bringing the truth to light. The link to help us and secure your copy is right here in the first pinned comment. Thank you so much for valuing true wisdom and for walking by our side.